Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we've got some reaction content to dive into. Now, it is somewhat rare these days that the Division 2 gets much widespread and mainstream media coverage. At least when it's outside of these big events, right? I think back to Division Day last year when there was obviously a lot of outlets reporting on all the things that were announced, the new DLC showing off some Descent gameplay, all that stuff. But unlike similar titles, let's say Destiny or Diablo, for whatever reason, the Division 2 doesn't really get a lot of journalist coverage, a lot of articles written about it, whatever. And so it caught my attention when there was an article posted recently by Windows Central titled, "The Division 2 is 5 years old and shows how to do a live service game right." Now, the reason that I wanted to make a video on this and talk about this is not because, oh my gosh, someone wrote an article on the Division 2. No, it's because the content of what the author goes over in here actually mirrors and reflects, I think, a lot of the general discussions that we often have around here on the channel. And I think hearing it from an outside perspective, as opposed to someone like myself or anybody who is just so engrossed and enriched in the Division 2 and plays all the time, it has a bit more weight. And I think anytime you get an outside perspective like that, it can really enrich the overall conversation. And that's always what we want to do around here. And so yeah, I figured it would be fun to read through the article together. I'll give some of my commentary on it, and then afterwards I would of course love to hear your thoughts down below. So that's the plan, and if you enjoy coverage on the Division 2 like this and you want to see more, then be sure to click that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Let's go. So, as I said, we're at least going to read through the majority of the article here. The link for the full thing is down in the description below. Definitely recommend you check it out. But as I said, this is posted by Windows Central just the other day by Richard Devine, titled, "The Division 2 is 5 years old and shows how to do a live service game right." Here we go. Live service games are often a topic of discussion, good and bad. For players, having a game with a continually progressing experience that they can return to can be good, even if it's sometimes exhausting and expensive. That latter point is particularly pleasing to the people making these games. Money makes it all happen, after all, but too often, instead of just creating a good experience for players, shilling skins and the likes becomes the priority. You can almost understand it more in free-to-play games like Apex Legends, but expensive purchases aren't exclusive to these games. It made me think about my own favorite live service game, The Division 2. This is a game that had a planned shelf life but remains so popular with its player base that it has far outlived that, and it isn't just getting support, it's thriving. It's a live service game I play a lot and have no issue spending a few bucks in from time to time, but the key is that I don't have to. It isn't the only game that does it this way, but I think its popularity after 5 full years is partly down to how it has managed to offer new content without ripping off its players or demanding all of their free time to play. So I just want to briefly stop here because this is a point that I've raised more than once, I think, in previous videos, and I think it really is something to remark at, is the fact that when you have games like Destiny, like all these other live service games that require so much investment monetarily to just keep up with the game, and this is something that the article is about to get into, but I truly do believe, and I say this not even as a Division fan, but from an objective point of view, the Division 2 has got to be one of the least predatory live service, looter shooter experiences that is on the AAA market right now. So it goes on to say, the Division 2 is not alone in its model, but it's the one I've played the most, close to 800 hours and climbing. It's pretty simple to understand. If you want to play the seasonal content, the only thing you need is a copy of the base game and the Warlords of New York DLC expansion. The latter is what unlocked the current model, and it's necessary because seasons cover both Washington, D.C. and New York City maps, but that's it. And again, brief pause, I just have to say it because I always see so many comments of people saying, oh, these devs are just money hungry, they're greedy, they're doing all of this stuff. And if that's truly how you feel about cosmetic-only purchases, then certainly that's your right, but you have to keep in mind that you have not had to pay a dime to continue playing the Division 2 or getting the new content that it is released in over 4 years now, since the release of Warlords in 2020. Now that might change when we get the Brooklyn DLC next year, we'll have to wait for more details on that, but I think that is just remarkable, that a live service game like The Division has been able to be successful and, generate enough money given that fact. They go on to say, each season, new items, including new named weapons, gear pieces, and exotics are dropped onto the Season Pass. The Season Pass has 100 levels, and given how long each season lasts, it's not difficult at all, even for casual players to complete it. Not least because there are regular periods of double XP to help you through it quicker. I think the most recent Season Pass took me 5 days to complete all 100 tiers. Now, the one note that I will make here is that I do think it is a positive thing that players do not feel an overwhelming sense of, impossibility of completing seasonal stuff in the amount of time that they're given. But I do think, and this is from a hardcore player perspective, I do think it would be nice if we had a bit more of an incentive to continue playing the season and continue unlocking new stuff as you go throughout the thing, because for the majority of us, we're done with the season pass. Like this guy said, it took him 5 days. I'm done usually within a day. You know, if you're a bit more leisure with it, it could take you 2-3 days. But out of a 4-month season that we have now, I feel like that's a little bit too far on the side of like too casual. I think it would be nicer if we had a bit more, but maybe that is something that Seasons 2.0 will address later this year. We'll find out. Continuing on, it says, but the beauty is that the season pass is completely free. All the new gear added to this free track so that everyone benefits without needing to pay. There is a premium track, but all that offers is more stuff. There are more gear caches and cosmetics, but all the most important items each season are on the free track. This is a live service game you can enjoy every week of the year, take part in all the seasonal events, and get all the rewards without spending a dime. Other than this, the stuff to buy is all cosmetics. Even then, there are regular apparel events offering a selection of new threads that, again, everyone can play without the need for additional spending. Live service games need a sustainable income to make them worth it, but I really do think that Ubisoft nailed it with The Division 2's mostly cosmetic-focused model. I think the biggest reason that The Division 2 is the only live service game on the market that I've really stuck around with in the long term is that it doesn't consume your life. Destiny 2, by contrast, always feels overwhelming to me. I enjoy a grind, but that's a game that's always felt a little too grindy, not to mention without constantly playing it, following the story feels impossible. Now that is a point right there that I think is incredibly subjective. I'm sure there's going to be some contention there, because the fact is you have such a wide variety of players that both have different preferences in how grindy or how much investment you need to put into a game, compared to how much time people have to actually invest into the game every week, every month, whatever. For me personally, and this is a completely selfish, self-centered point of view, I would like it if Division 2 moved more in the direction of having more investment like Destiny 2 does, but I recognize that a lot of people enjoy this game because it is not like that. And I think this next paragraph here hits on that very well. It reads, for the dedicated players, there are daily and weekly projects that are always worth completing, but again, even if you're a casual player, you're not really missing out on anything. The whole game is set up in such a way that you can play as much or as little as you want and still feel like you're making the most out of it. And that last sentence, I think, rings really true. I'm frankly not sure how they've achieved this, but it really does. I think The Division 2 strikes such an excellent balance between casual players feel like there is a lot to do and their time is well spent, but conversely, for more hardcore players like myself, like a lot of people that I talk to, we still find things to do and an investment that feels worthwhile, right, to be able to put our time into the game and still get a return. Now, if you push those to the extremes, I think that's where you see things begin to taper off a bit. We've talked about how in-game difficulty in higher level content has begun to get a bit easy, again, for the highest level of players. And there's a lot that can be said about how much content actually gets released for the game in, let's say, a year's period compared to competitors like Destiny 2 or others. But I think it's hard to deny that for the vast and diverse audience that The Division 2 attracts, there really is a lot for every kind of person to engage with. And as the article said, for as much or as little time as you want to put into the game, you still feel like your time is being well rewarded. Alright, to close out here, the next game, The Division 3, as we expect it to be called, has been confirmed, albeit we're not expecting to see it for years yet, but I'm confident that it's going to be epic. The original Division game was a live service game of sorts, but not close to what's been achieved with the sequel. The constant supply of new game modes, an expanding story, and now a huge overhaul of the game's entire quality of life with Project Resolve is credit to its developer, massive. The work still goes on, and as Year 5 comes to an end later this year, the Year 6 roadmap will kick in. This is currently slated to bring a new story DLC expansion to, the first since Warlords of New York landed in 2020. The time between expansions may be long, but the fact that it's coming so late into the game's life at all is amazing. If you've never tried it, I can't recommend it enough. The game and expansion are frequently on sale, and there's a ridiculous amount of content to enjoy that makes it such a good value. I don't know if we've got another 5 years of this one or not before the sequel, but I'm here for it, however long it lasts. Alright, and that closes out the article again by Richard Devine over at Windows Central. Shout out for writing that. I thought it was very well written, very well articulated. And as I said, throughout, I think a lot of those points ring really true to a lot of the discussions that we often have around here. Speaking on that last part too, as he mentions the Division 3 and Project Resolve and what's coming, in the future for the Division 2, I really do think that from a certain perspective, you can kind of begin to see what is likely the goal with the Division 2 moving forward, which is that they know the Division 3 is coming. They know that that is going to be the big thing to invest into in terms of regular content, in terms of the most amount of resources. But in the meantime, if they can continue to provide a solid experience for the Division 2, continue to provide new story, new modes, new content, even if it's in a more limited capacity to what they are hopefully planning to do for the Division 3, then they get to continue to provide positive experiences and impressions for people like Richard, who wrote the article, and, countless of other people out there who aren't even online. And all that does is build up a goodwill that they can hopefully then capitalize on when it is time for the Division 3 and when it it is time to hopefully reinvest in this franchise and make it that true live service juggernaut that I think we all want it to be. And that's certainly something that I'm looking forward to, but in the meantime, I do think The Division 2 has achieved almost the impossible. It went through a huge content drought, but it's still now growing. We've got a lot of big plans coming up with the DLC, and they continue to provide all of these content and experiences without charging the consumer, like we said in here, a dime. And again, that might change in the future, but hopefully hearing this from an outside perspective, like in this article, helps some of you realize how rare that is in the current gaming industry landscape. I think so, anyway. But my friends, that is mainly going to do it for our coverage today of this article on The Division 2 by Windows Central. As I mentioned at the start, we don't often get a lot of media coverage on the game like this, so I thought this was not only cool to see in and of itself, but again, it talks about a lot of very pertinent topics towards what we often discuss here on the channel, what I see the community talking about on other forums across the internet, so I figured it would be fun to go through. I hope you enjoyed it, and whatever your reactions or thoughts are to everything that we talked about, I would love to hear your take on things down below. What do you think about how The Division 2 has structured itself and what they plan to do with it moving forward? That is going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.